doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
To me, it felt frightening that we had to reach this moment in the Palestinian struggle. And I remember I didn't sleep for a number of days, and Noor was very worried about like just my health. And it was heavy. Like I still remember, like I was like, this couldn't happen. And
what do you mean we had to reach this moment? What moment is this?
I was interning at UNRWA at that point, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency at the UN, at their New York office. And as part of my internship, my research and work was focused on, Palestine, on the situation in the West Bank and Gaza. And you can see that the situation is not sustainable. You have an Israeli government that's absolutely ignoring Palestinians. They are trying to make that deal with Saudi and just happy about their Abraham Accord without, looking at Palestinians as if Palestinians are not part of the equation. And they circumvented the Palestinian question. And it's clear, like, it's becoming more and more violent. Like, by October 6, over 200 Palestinians were killed by Israeli forces and settlers. Over 40 of them were children. So that's what I mean by, like, unfortunately we couldn't avoid such a moment. And yeah, it was absolutely difficult, like, to see not only the horrific images, but also the response of Israel. Because I knew like that's what Netanyahu wants.
Here, occupy Gaza. I hear American troops occupy because the IDF can't do it, and the IDF chief of staff has been adamant. These cabinet meetings have been at each other's throat. To Netanyahu's son, who's 30-some years old, is tweeting out there's a mutiny and or a coup d'etat happening with the IDF against his father as the head of the Israeli government. Netanyahu knew that at the beginning. Here, there is no possibility they have the ability to occupy Gaza. They don't. Don't take it from me that chief of staff of the IDF is a pretty tough hombre. He's telling them we can't do that. Are you crazy? This thing's getting ratcheted up at the very time you're saying, hey, we need transparency and we need to tone it down. He is looking for American troops to come in and be part of that because the IDF doesn't have it. Who tells me that? Not Steve Bannon, not Breitbart, not General Flynn. The Times of Israel and the Jerusalem Post are saying they're at each other's throats in these meetings where the IDF is sitting, the general's sitting there going, dude, my troops are worn out. I can't even take down Hamas right now militarily. We're struggling to do that. I can't occupy a thing with millions of people. It'll be 10 times worse than Iraq.
They have got to take some responsibility. Otherwise, this is just going to continue to be a cycle of violence, a cycle of war, and it's going to draw the United States into something that we can't afford any longer. All while we are on a war footing right here in our own country, Steve.
Вот так горит сейчас. Со стороны Румынии видно, как белый день там. Вон на пароме все стоят. Там или нефтепровод, или что, короче. 15 пролетов в одно место и в конце только попали. Все горит. Ну что сбила? Над головой прямо. хотя так уже минут 15 горит.
This is one of the things that I'm so excited about because we've seen our ICE officers be terrorized by activists, by violent people who want to do them harm, and they have continued to go out bravely and do their jobs and make sure that they're upholding the rule of law. And so our recruitment efforts to hire 10,000 new ICE officers has been extremely successful. Lawrence, as of today, we have over 80,000 applicants for those 10,000 positions already. People and patriots across this country that say, we want to join, we want to help and be a part of this effort. It's overwhelming to see the amount of response and support that our ICE officers have gotten and people who want to join their ranks. So I would tell everybody, go to join.ice.gov and go there and sign up, be a part of this team that is helping make America safe again with President Trump. And the other thing, Lawrence, I would say is we've removed any of the age barriers. We no longer have a cap on how old you can be, or you can continue at age 18, sign up for ICE and join us and be a part of it. We'll get you trained and ready to be equipped to go out on the streets and help protect.
Welcome back to the SCIF. We have a great show for you today. Brandon Weichert is going to be on here shortly, and we're going to talk about geopolitics across the world and what is going on across the world as far as life under Trump in the new Trump third term. We also saw in the cold open there the Palestinians admitting that they did October 7th in various words. And then you had the response from Gaza from Steve Bannon with the IDF very much not in agreement of occupying Gaza. And then you saw Romanians across the river from Ukraine watching Ukraine burn. So a lot going on today. This is, August 7th. I'm your host, L Todd Wood. Here's your mission brief. Venues selected for Trump-Putin meeting in coming days. That's happening. Transhumanism and death and grief is something with the AI video that Acosta interviewed was really off. And we want to mention that. RFK halts some mRNA research. That's good, but more needs to be done. Wind and solar power is bankrupting Florida. And shooting at Fort Stewart, essentially killing a soldier's entire chain of command except his ultimate commander. So much going on. By the way, we're supposed to go on the War Room this morning, live casting here, but we're going to be on the evening show. So we'll be on the evening show with Steve Bannon this evening talking about Armenia and the agreement tomorrow at the White House. A lot going on. I want to say hello to everyone in the chat. We love the engagement. Thanks for joining us today. Please check out whatfinger.com and check them out daily. They're posting a lot of our content, and we really appreciate that. They are a great aggregator service. So a lot happening today. We'll have Brandon Weichert on here at the bottom of the hour, but we'll be right back after this break. Thanks for joining us on the SCIF.
I'm a naturopathic doctor. We are in the world of medicine very acquainted with many modalities, but probably the one most familiar with everybody would be two things: homeopathy and herbals or herbs, maybe some nutrients too, vitamins, minerals, that kind of thing. Now, we do know a lot about the drugs because we have to find out what drug you're taking affects you and what nutrient it depletes you of, because most every drug pharmacy product will deplete something. So we have been trained and we have a database that we can check into that says this is going to take your B12 away. The pharmaceutical company cannot patent organic substances made by the body. You're not born short of Advil. You're not born short of Ritalin.
Yeah.
You can be born short of insulin, right?
Mm-hmm.
The answers to staying healthy and keeping away from even SARS or any of those things getting into you is staying healthy.
Mm-hmm.
You and I get sick because our terrain gets out of balance. Well, that's the same thing in the soil. You and I are made from this thing called dirt. And when we get out of balance, we have the same thing happen. Weeds start to grow in our body. Right? And that's what we want in our body. We want nutrients that we don't understand how to get well enough yet because our suppliers are lacking knowledge on nutrient density foods.
So this is what drove you to develop this, was your knowledge of this, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know that.
I'm excited to announce that we're having a huge sale on overstock and brand new products. For example, My Pillow Percale bed sheets, every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. Our Percale bed sheets are breathable, cool and crisp, and they're perfect for spring and summer. And check out Rev 7, the next generation of energy drinks. It tastes great, and it gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. Best of all, it's actually good for you. And for a limited time, try our 3-pack absolutely free. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs, or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes, only $29.88. Twin size, full size, queen size, king sizes, all $29.88. Inventory is extremely limited at this price, so order now.
Welcome back to the SCIF. Today's theme is reality in the world, what we're facing all over the world. And Brandon Weichert is going to walk us through that. Fantastic interview. I taped it earlier, and I think you're really going to enjoy that. Brandon's got some great insight on a lot of different topics, and I really enjoy having him on. So he'll be on at the bottom of the hour. But the reality is we're facing conflict all over the world. And you saw Steve Bannon talking about Gaza right there. This is an issue we're going to dig into. I will be in the Levant in Beirut, Lebanon next week with the team. We're going to be talking about Christian persecution, but also what's going on with Israel and Hezbollah. And we'll be getting things on the ground straight from the horse's mouth, as they say, as we like to do at CDM. So you're going to get another week of great content out of there. And we're looking forward to that. Couple announcements just came out. President Trump is going to redo the census. This is huge because the last census was done, obviously counting a lot of illegal aliens. This is going to change radically the House of Representatives. So, wow, that's a huge announcement. Also, Trump is basically barring foreign chips from coming into the country, and he wants the head of Intel to resign. So chips are a big issue because it's the future, it's success, it's AI, it's everything. And Trump's not messing around. I guess 100% tariffs on chips coming into the U.S. now. We're going to put that out later on the network. We've just been way too busy up all night. As I mentioned, we'll be on War Room this afternoon on the Armenia discussion and the meeting tomorrow. We're going to be talking about the Trump, what do they call it here? I'm going to bring this up. Fascinating development here. I just got to bring this up 1 second. So this is the Trump route for international peace and prosperity. We've talked a lot about Armenia. It's going to be connecting the two parts of Azerbaijan through southern Armenia, and it looks like the U.S. is going to lease it for 100 years, 99 years, and control it, which means U.S. contractors, possibly U.S. mercenary type, Blackwater types, to protect it. Armenia is pretty peaceful in that region, but it's right on the border of Iran. So what could go wrong? But we'll talk about that in depth as the next few days go, and we'll see what comes out tomorrow. But we've been all over this story, and that's why War Room asked us on. Also, we'll be on Emerald Robinson tomorrow as well, talking about the same thing. The phone's ringing because we go out and we get the info and bring it back to you and bring it on this show. So huge issues going on. So this one is the Zangier corridor in Armenia, connecting to two parts of Azerbaijan. And this is a little better map. You can see this is Nashivan on the left. This is Azerbaijan on the right. And the corridor will go across this orange area down south. And then below that, you see Iran and then Turkey to the west. So this is a bad hombre neighborhood, as the POTUS would say. And we want to hear the details. So all of that's coming out. We have some details in this article that have been released out of Armenia. You can see this on cdm.press on the headline. And information about Iran is very worried about this because it's going to pull the trade and everything that Iran and China have been trying to get up into Europe through Asia Minor, the Anatolia region. It's going to put it in U.S. hands, and it's going to reduce Russian involvement in the South Caucasus. We talked about that yesterday. Huge move by the Trump administration, huge flex, and we're going to see how it goes. But Iran is going to be exposed, and it's going to highly weaken them. They don't get along very much with Azerbaijan, although there are a lot of Azeris in Iran. But again, a bad neighborhood. But the Armenians, we're hearing that the take on this is that this is a soft security guarantee for the Armenians by having U.S. troops across there, which would protect Christian Armenia, which has been under pressure for a long time. So this is huge. We're going to continue on it, and you're going to get the best information here. Let's talk about another story. Venue has been selected for the Trump-Putin meeting. Steve Witkoff just went into Moscow and met with Putin, and I guess it went very well. There were signals sent by both sides that they're ready for peace. The sanctions are coming against Russia, which could severely hurt their economy and their energy exports, which allow them to fund the war. Trump has already put on an additional 25% against India to that effect. And he said today or yesterday that more countries could be added. It could be China. It could be others. This is maybe Trump found the pressure point for Russia, because Russia seems to be bending and saying, okay, we'll stop fighting now. So this is an interesting development, and we'll see if it gets put all the way through, if it's just more spin, but we'll see if it gets closed. But hopeful that the war that we've been talking about for 3 years now that needs to end is finally getting closer to that end. We will see. Not sure yet. They're supposed to meet next week. They say the venue has been selected, likely the United Arab Emirates or some other faraway rich place that's fairly quiet. UAE would be a good choice to both. Putin has already signaled he would agree with that. So that's likely where it will be. And we're going to cover it. Maybe we'll even go there. How about that? We'll see. Now let's look at what happened yesterday, unfortunately, on our military channel, the armedforces.press. A Fort Stewart soldier shot his entire chain of command. This is the problem with discipline in the Army. It's a result of maybe the Secretary of Defense turning back up the reality and the pulling out the Marxism, which gave a lot of people an ability to act against the chain of command and against discipline. Maybe reinstalling that discipline has got some people angry. And, you know, if you're a DEI warrior and you came into the military as a certain favored group, and then all of a sudden you're told, no, you have to be a soldier and you have to get in the trench and fight with everybody else, you know, maybe that doesn't look so good to these people who were trained in DEI and marinated in it, as you say. So we'll see what the reality is on who this was. The soldier has been identified. So far, there's been no fatalities that we have seen, which is good, but 5 hospitalized. Everybody in his chain of command except his ultimate commander was shot. Not good. Fort Stewart, we pray for the people down at Fort Stewart in Georgia, in Savannah, and that is also on our Georgia paper at georgiarecord.com. Let's look at another story. Wind and solar energy is bankrupting Florida. We have talked about this over and over, that this is a big scam. It's a, you know, if you look at pattern recognition, the pattern is you'll come in and you'll take over something, a country, a jurisdiction, a town, by a globalist agenda, and you destroy that town slowly, but you get rich in the meantime. And a lot of that's through the funding, through the NGO funding, and also the funding of these renewable energy projects, which ultimately will destroy an economy, but people get rich along the way. That's exactly what's happening in Florida, where you've got these massive sun farms, solar farms, you've got massive windmills, and it's just destroying the state. It's not ecological, it's not economical, but a lot of people are making money putting this stuff in, including people in China. So you go figure. But Eduardo Vidal, who we have on the show all the time, Ed Vidal, has a great article here and goes into depth about how this is misguided and is hurting the great state of Florida over time. So with that, we're going to take another break. We'll be right back, and we're going to get Brandon Weichert on, and we will talk geopolitics. Stay with us.
Celebrate our newest launch, Rev 7. I'm bringing you an amazing introductory offer, plus an exclusive overstock sale that you're not going to want to miss. Rev 7 is our premium energy drink that tastes great and gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. That's because there's no sugar and no caffeine. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7 that for a limited time you can try our 3-pack absolutely free. Or check out our Percale bed sheets. I can't believe I'm even going to say this. Every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs, or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes, only $29.88, even the queens and kings. Inventory is extremely limited, so order now.
Pandemic, we can never be caught unprepared again. And so many Americans, when COVID hit, they had nothing in the house. Stores were shut down, and doctors' offices were shut down. And even if doctors prescribed drugs, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, pharmacists wouldn't fill the prescriptions. That was a nightmare.
Now the situation is much worse. We have these horrible supply chain problems. In our emergency medical kit at the Wellness Company, we have 8 prescription drugs that are all potentially life-saving.
Most people who died with COVID, they died in the hospital because they didn't receive early treatment.
Every American family should have one of these.
I can tell you the Wellness Company kit is the answer.
When Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah, we'll give him a hearty welcome then, hurrah, hurrah, all the men will cheer, the boys will shout, the ladies they will all turn out and will all...
Welcome back to the SCIF. Let me bring that down. I want to just highlight the mention of MyPillow. Mike Lindell has a lot of great products. Check it out. If you're looking for a gift, if you're looking for something for your kids, check out what Mike has. What I love is the quality, because I get stuff that doesn't get destroyed in the first wash, if you will. I bought some sheets at Walmart, I've mentioned before, made in China, and came home, used them once, washed them, and they turned from blue to yellow. You don't want that. You want very high quality, and Mike brings that, and the price is great. You can't beat the price. So check out what he has. 600 products. If you need a gift, go to mypillow.com, use promo code CDM, and you'll get the best discount. We also talked about Nucleo Boost. This is the capsule form that's out now. If you go to cdmnutrition.com, you can read all about it, and you can get the subscription, which is cheaper monthly. It's what we do to keep the stamina going. And wow, it's been an intense few weeks. We were all over Asia Minor, Anatolia, Turkey, Istanbul, Armenia, and then really meeting with people, meeting with sources. The reason we're getting all these breaking stories out of Armenia, because we were on the ground developing sources in Yerevan and elsewhere, and in the church, in the government, in the intelligentsia, in the media community. And so we understand what's happening in country, and that's why we're getting all the calls. to be on these shows. So check us out on War Room tonight and on Emerald Robinson tomorrow. I'm going to bring in, I'm going to start the interview I did with Brandon Weichert. I'll probably break it up with a commercial because it's rather long, but we really delve into some fantastic topics. And, I don't agree with everything Brandon says, but he definitely knows what he's talking about, and he definitely has an opinion. So I think you're going to really enjoy this. And we've got some great guests coming up. Mary Holland from Children's Health Defense to talk about RFK's new stuff on mRNA will be with us. We're trying to nail that down. A lot of other guests coming on board, so stay with us, but enjoy this from Brandon Weichert. Here we go. So we're lucky to have Brandon Weichert back with us. I was able to snag some of his time. Brandon, thanks, man. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, as always.
So let's start with Russia. We were just talking before the show, and there's this report of some British officers possibly being targeted in some type of commando hit on somewhere in southern Ukraine that allegedly pulled some NATO officers out. What are you hearing on this?
Yeah, no, it's all I'm hearing are unconfirmed reports from Ukrainian affiliated bot type accounts and NATO, the NAFO, type accounts who are the biggest idiots in the world. So I don't know. I did reach out. I have some people who work at Russia Today and Sputnik, and I realize those are Russian. I know they're Russian affiliated networks, but I did reach out to them saying, "Are you reporting any of these stories?" And what they told me is, "Yes, we've heard them." And this was 2 days ago, so I haven't checked in. They might have changed this because I don't know. But as of 2 days ago, they had heard these stories, but none of Russia's media were reporting it, which indicates to me that they're not officially ready to go ahead with this. It's very believable. As I told you before the break, 2 weeks ago, I was on Al Arabiya English, and I did their Counterpoint show. And I got into a debate with former Defense Secretary for Britain, David Cameron's government, Sir Michael Fallon. And part of the debate, I cornered him and basically demanded that he explain his government's position on my theory and others that basically the Brits were trying to ensnare the Americans through an Article 5 declaration by putting some of their people in Ukraine and hoping they either got shot or killed or captured so they could get that declaration going. And he basically
would that trigger that though, because that's not a threat on NATO, right?
Well, it's an attack on British, British citizens or British officers. They could certainly make the case. Let's just leave it at that. They could certainly make the case that constitutes a violation or a need for Article 5. Whether or not the Trump administration feels that rises to the occasion, I would have said about 45 or 55 days ago, categorically it wouldn't. But given how Trump has sort of crapped the bed the last 45 days, who knows? But I cornered Sir Michael Fallon and got him to basically admit that is the sort of the thinking in London is, if we can get some of our guys into Ukraine and they get killed or captured on a quote unquote peacekeeping basis or mission, that would maybe allow for them to ensnare the Americans. What I want to make clear, the 5% canard, right? This is, NATO, they got Trump held the fire, feet to the fire. The people who are saying this are the NAFO types. The people who are saying this are the pro-NATO bots. The people who are saying this are the leaders of NATO in Europe who are very scared about the alliance going away. The people who are saying this also are the Hudson Institute types who, until 2 seconds ago, were never Trumpers. But now suddenly Trump is bombing Iran, and he's obviously now recommitted to NATO. And now suddenly Trump is this very tough negotiator in their eyes. Well, the real reason is because they know they got Trump by the soft spot. They got him where they want him. The 5% canard is exactly that. It's not legit. Those economies in Europe are never going to be able to sustain 5%. They're not going to even be able to make that quota anytime soon. This is just to keep Trump engaged long enough for them to get a declaration of Article 5. And once that happens, all of these concerns go away because the Americans will basically take the lead and we're at war with Russia.
And that just for our audience, Article 5 is the NATO article in the treaty with our alliance that if one nation is attacked, we have to respond as an alliance. So just so people understand that. So I'm hearing that from my sources that the narrative the Brits are putting out is, well, they were there on war tourism, which I find a weird, term in itself. But we'll see.
That term, I first heard that term from a friend of mine who served in Iraq during the Casey years. General Casey was in command, and that was around the time that Casey was basically telling our troops not to do patrols, and if you do patrols, you have to stay in the Humvees and you have to stay behind armor, not integrate. And he derisively, he said it felt like I had become a war tourist just passing through a war zone. But now apparently this has become a thing, war tourism, because a neighbor of mine, somebody who lives the next town over from me, 25-year-old former Navy SEAL, was killed in Ukraine about 2 years ago, supposedly there as a volunteer. He was a Navy SEAL, though, and I have strong reason to believe that Eric was killed because he was a CIA contractor, and he was part of a CIA mission there. So, there's that as well. War tourism is the new lingo for covert action.
Mercenary, whatever. Yeah, I had a guy tell me to my face, that we just came back and my friend stopped counting at 500 Russians that he killed. So I mean that we're in it over there.
That's right. Sure. And let's not forget, a year ago, last August, I reported this, and I've been trying to get follow up on it, and it's become a dead end. But there was a couple of Chechens who came into the United States.
Yeah.
And they posted up they pretended to be these utility workers, and they posted outside Lieutenant Colonel in the Special Forces out of Fort Bragg. They posted outside his house. And when he came back from Ukraine, they attempted to murder him and his entire family. And that was specifically, it was Chechens, and the Chechens are basically the bagmen for the Putin government. They're military. So a hit was put out on our special forces guys because of and it was a psychological warfare unit related to Fort Bragg Special Forces. So whatever our guys were doing over there in Ukraine came back home. Now, luckily, that guy, the lieutenant colonel, detected the intruders on his property, and he was able to kill them, or killed one. The other one the other one got away. But the point is, we are clearly not just passive observers in this conflict.
So true. What about Russia? The tweets we talked about. It's getting a little scary with the nuclear saber rattling, is it not?
It's getting especially stupid. It is, I have an article that came out at the National Interest about a day or two ago. Basically we went with the title, When Two Windbags Collide. And it was Medvedev versus Trump, because Medvedev is Dmitry Medvedev, who's currently the deputy, I think he's the deputy national security advisor for the Russian Federation. He was briefly the president of Russia during Obama's first term. He's considered very much to be a mouthpiece of Vladimir Putin, informally and formally at times. But Medvedev is seen generally as sort of this kind of gonzo figure. He tweets really nutty things on Twitter. He's been threatening total nuclear war pretty much since the second week of the Ukraine war. This is kind of par for the course for him when he issues these threats every few weeks. And he again issued a similar threat against Trump, using the N-word, as Trump says, nuclear. And Trump apparently didn't like that. And his response was to announce that we were moving 2 nuclear submarines into Russian territory, or near Russian territory, obviously an attempt to threaten them. The whole thing is ridiculous. 2 nuclear submarines.
We have subs on nuclear triad on alert all the time, right?
Well, that's the thing. John Bolton's not my favorite person, but he did sort of kind of get me laughing, because he said on CNN the other day after that was announced, he said, clearly Donald Trump doesn't know anything about the nuclear triad, because we have subs rotating in and out of Russian territory.
That's what Putin said.
Right. And frankly, the Russians do it to us too. They come in under the Arctic, and they post up 25 miles outside the coast of the US, and they just chill out. And look, I live in Florida. What was it, on last Friday or Monday of this week? Yesterday, I can't remember. It was in the last 5 days. 2 Russian submarines and a Russian warship conducted nuclear missile drills, 60 miles off the coast of where I am right now in Florida. So, this is, this is sort of normal. What Trump did was he highlighted this thing publicly. He therefore made the Russians publicly have to go into a defensive crouch. And now my reporting coming out, they're editing the piece right now, so it'll be either later this afternoon or tomorrow. They're going to be at the National Interest releasing my next report on the Moscow government has been apparently in secret negotiations, not so secret anymore, with Caracas in Venezuela to base a handful of the Oreshnik hypersonic weapons in Venezuela in retaliation for what Trump is doing with the nuclear submarines. And again, it's very key here. It's not that the action of putting those submarines is causing this. It's the fact that we highlighted it publicly as sort of like we're banging our chests. Well, that's going to force the Russian strongmen to basically retaliate publicly. And this could have a very significant permanent negative impact on U.S. national security in our own hemisphere. Furthermore, it is a highly destabilizing move, none of which would have happened or even been talked about happening had Trump not opened his big fat mouth on this issue.
Well, they also pulled out of some. I'm not the expert on they pulled out of some treaties, right? This morning or yesterday.
Yeah. So, and I'm working on that piece right now, actually. Yeah. Medvedev announced that they were pulling they're pulling out of basically and I'm forgetting the treaty off the top of my head, but it's the treaty that prevents the deployment of intermediate range ballistic missiles into Europe. Now
the one that we had the big demonstrations about.
That's right. I think is that is that the INF?
Yeah.
But we to be fair, we pulled out of the INF in 2018 when the first week of John Bolton's tenure as national security advisor. Now, the reason we did that was it had nothing to do with Russia. It was because China was not a signatory to the INF, and they were basically building out an arsenal that outstripped even that of Russia with IRBMs because they didn't have any of the caps that the Americans and Russians were privy to. The Russians, I believe, if it's the INF, and forgive me, I'm drawing a blank, but I believe it was the INF, and the Russians said they were going to continue to adhere to the dictates of the treaty, even though the U.S. had pulled out. Well, now the Russians are fed up. And I want to make something clear because the American people don't really understand who we're up against, okay? Putin and his team, they're traditional Russians in the sense that these are masterful strategists. They are masterful chess players. Now, what is one thing that Sun Tzu tells his audience to do? To provoke your enemy into ire in order to get them to make stupid moves. Okay, well, Medvedev comes out and he makes this statement that annoys Trump, which then forces Trump into this blusterous, this boisterous response, which then prompts the Russian government in response to that to say, you know what, we're officially downgrading our commitment. We're out of the INF. We are now going to be able to freely, at will, deploy IRBMs into Europe. The real goal was to get that on the table, to get IRBMs in Europe. I believe they tricked. I think they played Mr. Trump quite brilliantly by having their attack dog Medvedev come out and say something, knowing full well it would put Trump into this braggadocious.
Is Trump writing these tweets? I mean, the posts? I mean, who's doing that?
So Natalie is writing the tweets. Natalie, the blonde from OAN, Natalie Harp, I believe. Natalie is writing the tweets, I believe.
Interesting.
He dictates them. Now, to be fair, he does dictate most of those truth bombs. But it's Natalie, I believe, who's still right. I know she was during the campaign. But you have to understand, Natalie herself, she's a sweet girl, but Natalie is she is not known for her foreign policy acumen. Let's just put it at that. And she trends toward the conspiratorial. And therefore, you have basically a 24 or 5-year-old writing these tweets. There's a lot of other rumors about her as well and him. But anyway, the point is that the Russians, I believe, completely tricked Trump into creating the conditions that would allow for them to justify, however tenuously, their now movement of these IRBM systems. I believe they're moving them into Belarus. So look, this is part of this is all part of this is the final ensnarement of Ukraine.
Yeah.
If Trump's stated aim was to save whatever he could of Ukraine and to stop the killing, the last 45 days has been just the opposite. He is now ensuring.
I keep making the point. He keeps saying we got to stop the killing. Well, dude, you can stop the killing today. Stop sending the weapons.
Right.
Nobody dies. That's
well,
it.
And that's the thing. I still talk to the certain people in Russia still, and the people I've been talking to for many years say the same thing to me now that they said during the Biden regime, which is, if you're really serious about getting a negotiation or even trying to get negotiations going, you've got to at least temporarily freeze all weapons and support going in to Ukraine. And it's the one thing Trump refuses to do. And he could, you're right, do it tomorrow. He could say, I'm done. And frankly, he would have justification. Elbridge Colby, the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, he did a mandatory review of America's stockpiles about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And what they determined was that we have gone below war reserve status on our critical stockpiles.
Ridiculous. I've written about that over and over and over again. Right. And Trump said it.
That's right.
And
our defense industrial base cannot recoup those losses anytime soon, especially not with the operational tempo, both in Ukraine and in the Middle East being what it is. So Trump that was a perfect excuse to say, I'm freezing this thing. And I thought that's what he was going to do. But then if you remember, 48 hours later, after that report was released, Netanyahu shows up. Netanyahu then, I don't know what happened, but suddenly at that dinner, Trump is asked about that report that Bridge oversaw, and he threw Bridge under the bus. And he said, "Oh no, we're not. I don't know who did that. We're not stopping this. We're going to be releasing more weapons. The Ukrainians need it." So this is a guy who, is right after he met Netanyahu, and I have heard from certain people who are convinced that Mossad is part of the coalition to support Zelensky, and this is a Mossad operation. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but it's definitely very odd. Why would he meet with Netanyahu? And
it was like a switch.
It was like a switch. It was like somebody sat him down and said, "Hey, remember that Epstein stuff? You were friends with him for like 20 years. There's some stuff we have on you. You better start playing. You better start playing the way we want you to."
Well,
and by the way, Medvedev, in his Twitter exchange with Trump or with whoever was controlling the Trump account, he explicitly said, after Trump said, "I'm moving these nuclear submarines," he said, "Do you really think Mossad is the only foreign intelligence service with compromise on you?"
Yeah.
So, and I can guarantee you, if Mossad had it, they likely sold at least some of the information to Russia. And I want to make something clear about this as well. When you're talking about the highest levels of intelligence gathering and networks, at some point, even rival intelligence networks will start to cooperate. So we hear a lot about the Israeli-Qatari split. They hate each other, right? Well, I know for a fact from people involved that since 9/11, Israeli intelligence has been cooperating with Qatari intelligence to gain compromising blackmail on American business, military, and political leaders who sweep through the Middle East as part of their job. And so these networks, they may hate each other, they may fight each other on other things, but in other ways they cooperate. And that is the relationship between the U.S., Britain, and certainly Mossad when it comes to Epstein. But it's also, I believe, the relationship between those three organizations and Russian intelligence at that time. We know Ghislaine Maxwell's father was a triple agent. He was a cutout, not only between the U.S. and Britain, but between U.S., Britain, Israel, and the KGB. So at the highest levels, these organizations were actually intermarrying and working together on certain issues.
Well, the instincts Trump had initially were correct, and the people would support him if he said, "I'm done with Ukraine." I mean, he would.
That's right.
In fact, his poll numbers would go up.
So that, and if he said, "I'm going to get a deal in the Middle East and I'm not doing any more bombings," I am
what we voted for.
That's exactly right. I'm the biggest critic of the Iranian regime. It's not our friend. We can't trust them, but it has to be an internal Iranian issue. The Iranian people need to resolve this on their own.
Exactly.
That we can't do anything for them, because anytime we start trying to do top-down regime changes, particularly in that region, we end up picking the wrong people. We end up making everything worse. Again, look at Iraq. We make everything worse. I had I went to college with a girl who was a cop. She was a Christian from Iraq. Her dad was actually part of the Iraqi National Congress. And she told me, I'll never forget this. We did a Middle East politics class together. She's beautiful, beautiful woman, brilliant. But she yelled at me. She said, "Do you understand that life was better for us under Saddam than it was after the Americans came through?"
Well, in the case of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, these are two medications that have been FDA approved for use in humans for decades. They are very, very inexpensive. Interestingly, available over the counter in almost every other country other than the US and Canada. You can just walk into a pharmacy and buy them like we buy Tylenol in much of the world because they're that safe. And we've known for decades that ivermectin has very strong antiviral properties. It has anti-inflammatory properties, and both ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are what we call zinc ionophores. They help to move zinc from the bloodstream into the cell, which is where it needs to be in order to fight off a virus. So lots of application for these, and we have every reason to believe that those drugs also will likely have some efficacy against H5N1 or a number of other respiratory viruses that we may meet down the road.
If you haven't noticed, gold has reached a new high, all-time highs actually, and keeps going up every day. Why is that? It's because precious metals are a long-time historical store of value. And if you own a portfolio and you have assets in the fiat currencies, i.e. stocks, bonds, cash, or whatever, you're vulnerable to hyperinflation, which is coming as our debt explodes another trillion every 90 days. It's really scary. So how do you protect yourself? Go to Advisor Metals. If you look on any of our CDM.press sites, about halfway down, there's an ad for Advisor Metals. Click on it, fill out the form for your contact info, and Ira Bishotsky will contact you and talk to you. It's an easy conversation. There's no sales pitch. He's completely verified by us. He has a regulatory background we've checked into. We've checked with his bankers. We've checked with his IRA custodians for metals, and we can highly recommend Advisor Metals and Ira. So go to Advisor Metals. If you call them directly, tell them we sent you at CDM, and he'll definitely take care of you. But protect your portfolio because you really need to. It's coming. Thank you.
This is a woman whose father was tortured by Saddam.
Yeah.
So we have no business. And all Trump has to say is, I'm with the Iranian people. I hope that they do the best they can, but we cannot be bombing Iran expecting it to have a positive result, because the history doesn't match the reality. The history is not that in the region. Every time we bomb one of these regimes and overthrow them, something worse happens for us. So we need to be taking a step back.
I completely agree. And we didn't vote for that.
We didn't, no.
I want to ask you, I just got back from Armenia and I was in Istanbul, really looking at the situation. I think Armenia is fantastically interesting. I mean, so you've got the genocide hangover there. You've got the attacks by Turkey. You've got the Azeri war. You've got now the U.S. is coming in to establish and control
the Zangezur corridor. I can't say it
right along the Iranian border. And
how do you say it? Is it Zangezur? Is it Zangezur?
I don't know. I can spell it, but I can't say
I can too. Yeah. But you know what I'm talking about.
I do. So, you know, there's a meeting Friday between Pashinyan and Alevyev. I think Aliyev. How do you say the Azeri leader's name?
I don't know.
Peace
but
deal,
I know who you're talking
it's
about.
right along the Iranian border. The Iranians are now like, this is not cool. We're going to put U.S. forces to control. First, we're taking territory from Christian Armenia, which is bullshit to me, in my opinion. And literally taking sovereignty away from them. And they had this done to them over and over and over for decades. And you're putting U.S. troops on the Iranian border. I mean, what the hell? What's going on?
Okay, so I have been myself and my buddy Lee Slusher, who is another guy I need to put you in touch with. He's a great guest to get. former U.S. intelligence. We both on our own have been tracking this story, and there's so much there with Azerbaijan and Armenia. So let me just give you sort of some data points, and then I'll address your specific point because it all relates. I don't know if you heard, but they're talking now about incorporating Azerbaijan in the Abraham Accords.
I reported on that. Yes.
Yeah, so the Abraham Accords,
not Armenia, but just Azerbaijan.
Azerbaijan, yes, and there's a reason
not
this
the Christian country, but just the Muslim.
Muslim country, right?
Yeah.
This goes back to this Zhangzhou corridor, and they're trying. They, as in the U.S. led alliance, is attempting to basically cut out Iran from the natural gas and oil flows coming out of the Central Asia into Europe, into the other parts of the Middle East, because they want to hurt Iran's economy. Iran right now is able to charge transit fees. Azerbaijani gas and energy sources have to cross through Iranian pipelines. This new corridor would bypass that, basically. And the Iranians are saying, hey, this is an encirclement strategy. They're probably right. It is. So the Azerbaijan-Armenia conflict has been going on for years. Azerbaijan is not only backed by Turkey, a fellow Muslim power, they are backed heavily by Israel, and they are nominally backed by the United States.
I'm told that I was told on the ground in Armenia last week that Israel has bases inside Azerbaijan.
I was just getting to that.
Oh,
so
okay, sorry.
Let me just give you the 12-day war is what they're calling the conflict recently between Iran and Israel. Fine, it's a good name, it's very sexy. Okay, we'll go with it. The 12-day war happened, and everybody was stunned and amazed. And the Israelis said, the F-35 Ayadir is the reason we won this thing. It was amazing. Well, that's a bunch of malarkey. What they did, they had guys pre-positioned in Iran. They had drones coming in massive numbers from neighboring Azerbaijan, and they were conducting standoff missile attacks from relatively safe airspace in neighboring Iraq and neighboring Azerbaijan. In fact, there are some remarkable pictures of Caspian Sea fishermen pulling out the spent fuel tanks from F-16s from Israeli, and it has the Israeli writing on it, and it's, so that's clearly it's Israeli. The Israelis use, and they are still using, Azerbaijan as a base from where they can attack and strike deep inside of Iran. This is the hidden story. This is the story the IDF dare not tell, understandably, because this is where so much of the offensive operations against Iran emanated, was in Azerbaijan, and there is a continuous support for the Azerbaijani government. The Israelis helped and gave a bunch of money and weapons to Azerbaijan during the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, which were used explicitly to annihilate some of the oldest Christian communities in Armenia, in the world, in Armenia.
Country.
Yes. Well, and of course, now look, there's another layer here. The Russians have a major base in Armenia. And a few weeks ago, when the Zhangzhou corridor thing was coming out about how Turkey and the U.S. and Israel were going to help Azerbaijan develop this thing as a containment against Iran, the Russians, supposedly they're losing in Ukraine. They're moving 250,000 troops down to this Russian base, because the Russians obviously know that this is really part of NATO's play against Russia. So to be clear, the U.S., a country that was founded by Christians, that is overwhelmingly a Christian nation, has aligned with Islamist Turkey, Zionist Israel, to support Islamist Azerbaijan in slaughtering and annihilating our Christian brothers and sisters in Armenia, because they're trying to stick it to Russia.
Yeah.
Another Christian country, by the way.
We just spent 2 weeks over there on the ground, because that's exactly the story I wanted to bring out, is that nobody gives a damn about the Christian population there. I mean,
because they're not sitting on any oil, and they don't have,
And I am told with sources in Armenia that we developed that Pashinyan, the prime minister of Armenia, essentially sold the war to Azerbaijan, kept the war going. They had a peace deal. Russian troops were in Artsukh, all up there as peacekeepers. And then Pashinyan kept breaking the ceasefire, because he was getting something for the globalists that they wanted to keep the war going so that the Christians would be kicked out.
Something that Lee Slusher brought up. I interviewed him when I filled in for Emerald Robinson a couple weeks ago. Something he brought up to me. He linked this Zhangzhou corridor. He linked it to this massive base we're building in Romania.
Yes.
And he said that there is a direct connection between Zhangzhou and that base, the base that we overthrew the Romanian presidential candidate to ensure we would get. It's not just about having drones on the Black Sea. That's part of it. This is about creating an economic corridor that we completely control, pulling Central Asian energy sources out of Central Asia, weakening Russia's position there, bypassing Iran, and bringing it in to Europe directly.
I think you're exactly right, because the corridor goes from mainland Azerbaijan to the exclave on the other side of Armenia, right along the Iranian border. But I mean, we're going to continue this. I mean, nobody's talking about the Christian population, so we just started.
Well, nobody cares. I mean, look, nobody cares. I mean, look, the bottom line is whether you're looking at Christian populations in Gaza, whether you're looking at Christian populations in Armenia, they're not sitting on. Yeah, they're not. Syria as well, of course. Syria as well. Yes, they're not sitting on lucrative property, and if they are, they're not exploiting it, or they don't have the capacity to exploit it the way that, say, the Muslims exploit their oil sources, which means they're easy targets for these ravenous other religions that really hate Christianity. I brought this up with Dr. Scheuer this morning, and I'll bring it up here. Not only is there a national security, obviously, angle to what's going on in the Middle East with who we're supporting and who we're against, but there's also a religious angle here. The Zionist, Islamist groups, the one thing they agree on is they hate Christians, and they're getting the U.S. and the Europeans to support them in slaughtering the Christians. And of course, while Donald Trump is not a Marxist, but so many people in power in DC and Brussels and London and throughout the West, they're all globalist Marxists. So the red-green axis is very strong right now. They're aligned with the Islamists. They're aligned with the Zionists in the cause of killing as many Christians as possible. This is not just geopolitical. This is spiritual as well. This is a spiritual war we are seeing play out.
And we're not like using these terms lightly, slaughtering, killing.
No, I mean, that's what they're doing. It's like
it happened a few weeks ago in Syria. We installed ISIS or Al-Qaeda into Syria with Golani. First thing he does is go down and kill 10,000 Alawites and a few thousand Christians.
I was on with my buddy William Wolf, who is a wonderful guy. He's former Pentagon official for Trump's first term. He's currently I think he's the executive director at the Center for Baptist Leadership. He's a pastor. He's becoming a pastor. And I was on in December, right when the overthrow of Assad was happening, and he had me on to talk about what I knew about what was going to happen. And I said verbatim, everything that's happening today. I said, Jelani's going to come in. They're going to do the Arafatization of Jelani. They're going to put him in a nice suit, John Phillips of London, and they're going to make him out like he's this, intellectual poet type. This is what they tried to do also to Castro initially. And then, the true colors are going to come out when he unleashes his ISIS army upon the Christians and the Druze and the Alawites and eventually the U.S.-backed Kurds. And it is proceeding apace. In fact, it's proceeding a lot faster than I thought it would. I thought he was going to have to wait a couple of years to solidify power, but he just dove right in like the plucky jihadi that he is.
Well, and what people don't realize is that the Netanyahu government, they talk about, Tucker being, controlled by Qatar or whatever, but the government, his own chief of staff, or maybe not the exact position, but they're taking money from Qatar. That's what Qatargate is in Israel. So it's fascinating.
I want to make it very clear that which I said about the Epstein thing is true across the board. At the highest levels, Qatar and Israeli intelligence are one. This idea that there is this great divide, it's bunkum. It's malarkey. They cooperate in key areas. Look, there are people in Israel I absolutely adore. I think Caroline Glick is she's wonderful. I love Caroline Glick. She broke the story, and she's a Netanyahu advisor today, but she broke the story, the mowing of the grass. This is where I first heard it, was from her 4 or 5 years ago. Netanyahu's government, they had decided it was more sound strategically for them to basically bribe Hamas to not attack them so that the IDF could focus its defensive perimeter against Hezbollah to the north. Now, they were bribing Hamas, and we know there's an element of the Zionist political movement that believes they need to support Islamists who hate them because it will make a peace deal impossible between Israel and the Palestinians. If they help get in these Islamists are never going to negotiate in good faith with Israel. They don't believe Israel has a right to exist. And this is who Israel, the Zionists, want running Gaza. They want a fanatical Muslim Brotherhood group running Gaza because it benefits them in the long run, because they never have to worry about a negotiated settlement, because as we just saw recently, Hamas doesn't do negotiations.
Where do you see the Gaza thing going? I mean, to me, it's either Israel just removes them all and ethnically cleanses the area, or we have war for the next 20 years. I mean, what do you think?
Well, the biggest issue here is I'm just going to set aside, ethnic cleansing or whatever. I'm going to talk about logistics here. The biggest problem here is there's simply not enough troops and equipment available to the IDF for them to achieve their unstated objective. They simply are not going to be able to push all of those Arabs out of the Gaza Strip. They don't have the manpower, they don't have the money, they don't have the time. And Netanyahu, one way or the other, his days as a leader are coming to an end. I seriously doubt his successor will be interested in continuing this aggressive campaign. This campaign and the campaigns, again, I want to make it clear, Israel had a right to, they were right to go in initially after 10/7. They were attacked. It was a brutal attack. I get all that. They were right to do that, just like we were right to go into Afghanistan after 9/11. But everything that happened after that, Netanyahu kept expanding the war and hitting as many targets as possible outside of Gaza because it coincided, just like Bill Clinton did during the Lewinsky scandal, it coincided perfectly with major movements in the legal case against.
Well, every time he goes to court, they have another war.
That's right. It's just like 1998. Remember, with Clinton would bomb an aspirin factory in Sudan the night before Lewinsky is supposed to or somebody in the Lewinsky scandal. It's wag the dog. I mean, that's what this is. Netanyahu ultimately is just another politician, regardless of what country he's from. This is what they do when their rear ends are in a sling.
Well, it was one of the I forget who said it. A senior Israeli military official on the other side of the aisle said, "Look, we've taken these spots in Gaza like 2 or 3 times, and now we're going back in."
Yeah.
So
it's a lot like Vietnam too. I used to talk to a lot of Vietnam vets, and they were always befuddled by the fact that they would basically be forced to take a hill, then give it up, then have to go back. And they would say this is one of the reasons they lost the war, is because that's not a winning strategy. And Netanyahu's not interested in winning. I mean, I want to make this clear. Netanyahu doesn't care about winning. For Netanyahu's political purposes, it works that they keep having to fight, because every time something happens with him politically negative, he can just redirect and say, hey, I got to go now and occupy Gaza for 400 years.
The bird flu is circulating. We're getting more and more press, more fear mongering, more warnings about this. First, let's start with that. What say you on?
Well, what I say is it specifically is not circulating. It's in animals. There's one human, maybe 2 transmissions, no human-to-human transmission. And stand by, everybody. If there is some sort of sudden human-to-human transmission, you should immediately be suspicious that gain of function was involved with that. Just the fact that they're taking an animal virus and going nuts on it in the press and talking about it all the time, that to me leads me to believe that they have concerns that somebody is doing something with that virus, because this would not happen naturally, in my opinion.
Our world is changing rapidly. Many crucial systems we depend upon are collapsing. And the most important system that is failing is the food supply.
Mr. President, this Council is more than aware of the multiple challenges and threats the world is facing today. But the threat of famine, people starving slowly to death, must be a red line.
These food prices are going to keep going up and up, and they're going to keep feeding excuse after excuse, narrative after narrative.
Yeah,
where you're going to have to get off that treadmill and start getting more autonomous with your own food growing.
You want to make sure that you can eat, because frankly, food is the biggest issue as we are going through these transitions.
But amidst the chaos, there is a path to resilience. Marjorie Wildcraft is the female leader of the survival and preparedness movement. Marjorie has taught millions of people how to grow an abundance of food in a grid-down situation, even if you have no experience, are older, or out of shape.
I've spent decades finding the fastest, easiest, and funnest ways for the average person to be able to grow a lot of food. I've created a step-by-step process that's so simple that even kids to elders have been using it in order to grow a lot of their own food. And you can too, even if you have no experience, you're older, or you're out of shape.
Growing your own food is like printing your own money. Get started today.
I mean, this is not sustainable.
I, as you have a lot of friends in Israel, we've reported on it from the ground. I mean,
I have yet to speak to an IDF general who is okay. Seriously, I talked to a lot of retired IDF guys. They are not okay with the strategy right now.
Well, that's what I'm saying. In the beginning, people were like, "No, Netanyahu's." My God, the whole country was split over him. I mean, that's why this thing may have popped off. But now I see kind of like circling the wagons. Well, we're all Israelis. We got to fight.
Right.
But to me, it's the Netanyahu government, not Israel. That's how I see this going down.
I agree. It's the Likudniks. The problem is I was talking to somebody, I live in Florida, and there's a lot of Jewish people down here. I'm friends with a lot of Jewish people. I was talking to somebody down here who is Jewish and very pro-Israel, and they were like, why is the right turning on Israel? So it's very simple. I said, the problem right now is most people in the right who've been around for a while are tired of the Middle East generally. We are aware economically we cannot sustain this policy. And also we know fundamentally we are torn now between head-chopping Islamists on the one side and a very radical ethno-religious Zionist movement on the other. And as Americans, mostly Christians, we don't want anything to do with either of these things anymore.
Well, the problem is that, you see and I'm not talking, there's a Zog government or whatever. I'm just saying, you see the influence on our policy.
It's very clear.
U.S. policy. That's what pisses me off.
Our third highest ranking government official, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, he declares an early recess because he doesn't want to vote on the Epstein file release happening. Then he flies immediately, not to his district like any good congressman would do. He flies to Israel and he's, praying at the wall and whatnot, wailing at the wall. And then he's briefing members of the IDF. If that doesn't give you the heebie-jeebies of foreign influence, regardless of whether it's Israel or China or Qatar, it doesn't matter. I don't want my senior government officials spending all their time supporting a particular foreign government that is very toxic right now. It's not good for America's soft power for us to be this wedded to Israel.
Well, you see in this, in Georgia, they have to sign a pledge to support Israel to be in the Georgia legislature. You see this kind of crap, and it's like
in Texas, I think too, they did that.
It's just insane.
And then thankfully we got Trump to abandon, and I don't even know if he really did abandon it. The stupid part of the big, beautiful bill that basically, and I live in Florida, so that means disaster relief is a big deal to us. Anybody who's ever expressed any kind of, anything skeptical of Israel, the state has to prove that they do not support those beliefs if they want to have access to the federal emergency.
Why would he think that would fly?
Well, I think it's because, again, he's probably all over the Epstein files and he's doing whatever he can to stay in the good graces. There's also something else, and you mentioned this before the show began. I've written about it for the last year. If you remember, after the Soleimani hit, which was totally justified, I thought Trump was brilliant in doing that. It had to happen. Because Soleimani killed American troops. He's got blood. And the same thing with Jelani in Syria. We should be killing him too, because he killed people in Iraq who were our people, our troops. Anyway, there was a falling out between Netanyahu and Trump, and it was very real. Trump hated Netanyahu. In fact, it was so bad that Netanyahu, when Trump was contesting the election in 2020, Netanyahu was I think he was in the top 10 leaders, one of the first 10, who called Biden and said, "Congratulations on your win, Mr. President Biden." Trump, that was it. That was like the death knell of their relationship. But then something happened with Miriam Adelson, who, her husband, I always had a fondness for. He was a real, Shell Addison is a legend in Las Vegas, and he's an icon in his own right. But his widow is Miriam, and she's, and he was a Zionist too, but she's like the real Zionist. And Miriam basically dangled, I think it was $100 million or $200 million in front of the Trump campaign in July or June of 2024, and set the condition that if you want this money, you need to have a sit down at Mar-a-Lago with Netanyahu and his wife. And furthermore, you need to basically promise us you will be unapologetically pro-Israel no matter what the Netanyahu government does. And Trump took the deal because he saw the money and that's what he wanted. That is also in effect. He basically his presidency on some level was bought and paid for by Miriam Adelson.
I think that's the deal. I even said before that.
Yeah, I know you did.
There's a deal to like take on Iran to get elected.
Which again, I don't mind.
I can get by with that.
Right.
I can handle that. But
I can too, as long as it's a containment and deterrent strategy, the strategy I outlined in my book, The Shadow War. I made it very clear in my book, any attempt to trigger a direct conflict with Iran would end in disaster. The policy of the Abraham Accords originally, because I was a consultant. I consulted Jared and Avi when they were coming up with this with Pompeo. I was one of the first guys that got to talk to them and gave them some inputs on this. Now, it's changed since then, but when it was first formulated, the idea was we're going to kind of create, not exactly, but sort of a mini NATO for the Middle East where the Israelis and the Sunni Arabs would work together. We would help them work closer together. They would do trade deals with each other to bring each other together. They would do arms and mutual defense, whatever. It would create an alliance to contain and deter Iran's rise so that we could take a step back and focus on other parts of the world. It has since changed. It's no longer this sort of defensive, deterrence-minded containment strategy like what we did with the Soviet Union. It's now gone into full-blown rollback with America on the hook. And that's the problem. That's the problem.
What really pisses me off also is all these contractors in Gaza and elsewhere. They're looking to put them in Armenia. I mean, that's insane to me. Talking about sitting ducks for targets, for hostages, give me a break.
Well, and also it sounds like there's some violations going on the
Big
part
time.
of the I don't even know how American companies are getting permission to do business there like that. I don't know. I don't know why that's being allowed. I mean,
somebody's making a lot of money. That's
well, that's the issue here. But talk about draining the swamp. You want to start draining the swamp? Go after all the contractors first. That's the low hanging fruit.
Yeah,
that's the easy thing to do, right? Trump won't touch that with a 10-foot pole, though.
Yeah, it's frustrating, man. So all I can do, I think, is just continue to highlight what's going on so that people understand, and
Agreed.
pressures can be applied politically.
Hey, look, we got him to abandon this federal disaster relief thing, and that was explicitly because MAGA people, and I was on the small end of that, but I did have a role in that. We spent the last 48 hours pressuring the hell out of everybody we knew in the Mar-a-Lago crew. And he does seem to have backed off from that. Okay, good. So at the only good thing about Trump consistently is he is very sensitive to pressure from his team
and the media.
But particularly from the MAGA crew. If he senses he's losing the MAGA crew, usually he will reverse course. Unfortunately, when it comes to the Epstein thing, no amount of pressure is changing his mind, and you have to wonder why. But yeah.
Yeah. So I think we had a part in this Armenia thing. We were over there, we're reporting. I got a call from somebody close to Trump and like, great work. We're going to try to push this. And then all of a sudden they have a peace deal this Friday with them in the White House. I'm hoping that even, a small, not insignificant company like us can make a difference if you get out there and get on a story like that.
The real problem is going to be the rights of the Christians in Armenia is running up against the realities of geopolitics. And you have three very different actors, Turkey, Israel, the US, all aligning to basically destroy the Christians because they're in the way, basically. They're in the way of this Zangezur corridor. That's a big problem. It's
a huge problem, and I went to Istanbul, and I'll just real quick. I mean, that was the capital of the Eastern Christendom, and
of course,
and
the Hagia, was it the Sophia Hagia?
And it's like it's a den of thieves, man. You walk in there and you're like assaulted.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a working.
It was actually better under Ataturk. It was actually better
as a museum.
Yeah. Well, because I have a this was a family friend I grew up. He was a Navy guy in the Cold War era, and he used to talk so fondly about going to Istanbul and how it was so beautiful and it was so inviting. That I talked to friends of mine who go to Incirlik still for the military. They don't talk about it like that anymore.
No, it's become. I mean, literally. I had somebody on my team as we left Armenia. They were saying, "What a great place! The people are so kind," And I'm like, "Well, it's a Christian country." But then we went to Turkey, in Istanbul, and they're like exact opposite. I mean, guys, from the moment you get in a taxi, they're trying to rip you off.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, it was just
my great grandfather was British intelligence, and I remember. He had a saying that he told everybody, never turn your back on a Turk.
Well, they were creative in trying to get money out of you for sure. Well, Brandon, anything else you want to get out, man? I appreciate your time.
Yeah, no. Like I said, the story that's going to be dropping soon is the story of possibly Russia moving Oreshnik hypersonic weapons into Venezuela. This is key because, it's big also because Venezuela has replaced Cuba in our hemisphere as being the big threat. And Venezuela, Tren de Aragua is the big gang they've been sending up here for 5 years. It's not just a prison gang. I talk to Venezuelan dissidents here in Florida all the time. It targets Venezuelan dissidents for Maduro. He sends them target lists. They are a paramilitary. In fact, there are Venezuelan intelligence officers embedded actively with Tren de Aragua operating here in the United States. So it's not just about criminality. This is about Venezuela punching above its weight geopolitically. And now they're going to be using Russia to do that as well.
Yeah. Wow. Well, like have you back on when you get that story more filled out.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Watching my friends gain more and more weight, and then eventually I got to tell you, this is a little dark, but bad diet literally killed my whole crew.
Wow.
Diabetes, a stroke, I mean, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you had a stroke? You're not even 50 years old. You guys got to quit eating this stuff. Your body knows what's what. You're not conscious of this. But that's why people will go to the refrigerator and they'll grab this and that and the other and put together this outrageously elaborate combination of foods. Your body's trying to reach balance. Unbeknownst to us, our bodies are always trying to reach homeostasis. You can't eat all of this stuff and expect to live a long time. And one thing led to another, and I went, forget this. We're going to make our own product. So we partnered with one of the world's top 3 biochemists where nutrition-specific study is concerned. I said, all I want is the best nutritional and immune support product in the world. So we mixed it in yogurt. It's a powder. I got a bag of it here. I keep one on the console all the time, just so I can show people.
Yeah.
And it's a powder. Now, this is not candy. This is hardcore nutrition, and sugar is an enemy. And most people do not know that the reason these bellies are showing up on people all over the place, your body makes fat to store the toxins it can't get rid of. So it just puts them over here. But I can tell you this, you take this for 30 days and then lay off of it for 2 or 3 days, and you'll go, good grief, give me some more. Skin, nails, hair growing back. Cut yourself and it heals in half the time.
I'm David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, an investment advisory practice. I've been an advisor for nearly 30 years, and one of the questions I get asked most frequently is, do I have enough money relative to other people my age? And while that's an interesting question, it's also the wrong question. The right question is do you have enough money to sustain your lifestyle for the rest of your life? This is a question you should know the answer to. This is what we do. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big proud American Eagle logo.
We're slogging over Africa. Foot, slogging over Africa. Boot, moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. 7, 6, 11.
Welcome back to the SCIF. Hope you enjoyed that. I love having Brandon on. And if you want to follow up on some of what we discussed, Paying the Price, the untold story of the Iranian resistance, will show you how we can bring down the Iranian regime from the inside and not using American power or Israeli power for that matter. So great book that I put out last year and very insightful. I've had a lot of good reviews on it. Now, another thing I want to highlight is the Manhattan.press, which is our New York paper. We do a lot of the business news there. If you go to the top menu of the Manhattan.press, there's the Manhattan bestsellers. This is our response to the New York Times bestsellers list. These are just the bestsellers, just the best-selling books, just by the numbers. There's no influence, there's no bias, political bias. There's liberal books on here, there's conservative books, but it's just the best-selling books. These are the editor's picks we have up there right now, but these are adult nonfiction, adult fiction, politics, history, young adult fiction and nonfiction, children's fiction and nonfiction, just the best-selling books. So if you want a really accurate book list, bestsellers list, go to themanhattan.press and top menu, the Manhattan bestsellers. Now, you can also buy these books. If you click on one of them, let's say you want to buy Atomic Habits, it will take you to the CDM bookstore, and you can buy the book from us. So don't buy from Amazon or anyone else. Buy it from us. And at the top, you can search for a book, any book. We cover pretty much every book, and you can buy it from the CDM bookshop and get it delivered. So instead of Amazon, instead of any of the globalist corporations that are controlling what you're reading. So buy it from us, support free media, and we would highly appreciate that. And again, it supports us. So thank you. With that, I want to bring up, if you didn't see the interview with Tucker on the Oklahoma City bombing, I've been around a long time, and I didn't know a lot of this that came out in the interview. Did you know that there was 3 suicides found in their cell, Epstein style, during this incident? Did you know everything they're trying to cover up? I was shocked. I knew about the bombing, but I didn't know the backstory. And this was really one of the early first treasonous actions by people inside our government, we believe, to influence, unfortunately, the American people, and to continue this organized crime that we've seen inside our government. So I'm going to play some of this because I think it's highly instructive. And I'm not going to play all of it, but you should spend some time and listen to this whole interview by Tucker with this lady, this woman who knows a lot about it. So I'm going to play this right now.
Muslims had done it. That was the first understanding, was this was some kind of Islamic terror attack. And then we were told that no, it was really one guy with an accomplice who wasn't there. The guy was called Timothy McVeigh. He had a Ryder truck full of ammonium nitrate fertilizer mixed with diesel fuel, I think.
Yes.
And that's when most of us learned that mixture could produce an explosion like this. Now that's, I think, well known, but that's when most of us learned it. And he was a white supremacist. He was mad at the government. He was mad about Waco and Ruby Ridge. And he's a former, he was a veteran. But he was part of a network of white supremacists. And then we spent the next year or two hearing about this. Bill Clinton often referred to this. And then he was executed, and that was kind of the end of the story. So that's the layman's understanding of Oklahoma City.
Yes. And it was quite an amazing couple of days, in lightning fast speed. The FBI found Timothy McVeigh, tracing the axle from the Ryder truck to a motel 275 miles north in Kansas, where McVeigh had checked in to the motel using his own name. And pretty soon, just within a matter of a couple of days, the FBI found its way to Perry, Oklahoma, about 75 miles north of Oklahoma City, where McVeigh had been arrested on traffic charges, driving his Mercury car, the getaway car, without a license plate. And the arresting officer, found that he was carrying a concealed weapon. McVeigh was very polite the entire time. There was no thought that McVeigh was connected to the bombing. The highway patrolman took him into the Perry jail, and he sat there. He was on his way to a bond hearing and to be released when the FBI, through this incredible speed of their investigation, found him in Perry, Oklahoma on Friday afternoon for that now famous perp walk out the door without a vest, in his orange jumpsuit and his 1,000-mile stare, and the gathered crowd around chanting "baby killer." That's what we remember of our first sight of Timothy McVeigh, the suspected bomber.
Boy, the FBI is good. I mean, they got him within days on the basis of a truck axle. How did they say they did that?
They tracked the VIN number on the truck axle to Ryder in Florida, and Ryder had a record of that truck being rented out of Junction City, Kansas. And so they went to the rental agency, and sure enough, put two and two together. The identification was made from first the rental truck agency where McVeigh had rented the truck. They remembered him, and they made a composite sketch of the two men, not one, but two men who had been present for the rental of the truck. And with the sketches, the FBI spanned out in Junction City and found that motel where McVeigh had registered under his own name.
What do you mean, two men? Who was the other man?
The other man, who eventually would emerge as the mystery man of the Oklahoma City bombing, was never identified, but the staff at Elliott's body shop where they rented the Ryder truck 2 days before the bombing on a Monday. They all said there was a second man there, and he was described as being very muscular, having a tattoo, having dark hair, and just standing to the side while John Doe 1, who called himself Robert Kling, rented the truck.
Okay, so, and Robert Kling was Timothy McVeigh.
Robert Kling was John Doe 1, believed to have been Timothy McVeigh.
Who, in the end, was convicted, sentenced to death, and executed in pretty short order.
Right.
When was he executed?
He was executed in 2001. That is short order for a capital
for sure.
crime.
Yeah, for sure. So
6 years later.
So he's been dead for 24 years. The terror attack was 30 years ago. When you say the man with him was never identified, do you mean to this day?
To this day, never identified, and really the abiding mystery of the case.
I'm confused. How could you have the biggest terror attack, domestic terror attack in U.S. history, destroy, the downtown of a major American city, and you don't, over 30 years, you don't find the second guy?
That's a great question.
One of the truest observations ever. It's hard to have a good time if you're stuck in bad boots. Honor the West.
24 ordinary people in Oklahoma City who eventually were interviewed by the FBI about the bombing run. 24 eyewitnesses saw Timothy McVeigh with a second man in the Ryder truck. So we know he was there. As you can remember, the investigation was a very big deal for a very long time.
Yes.
Journalism covered it, and top journalists reported that the FBI had surveillance videotape, because of course that's what they do in a big crime like this. They went out and collected all the videotape, and they had John Doe 2 with Timothy McVeigh on videotape delivering the bomb. They had videotape of the bomb exploding. The preliminary hearing for the case was held, a week or so after the crime, and the videotapes were discussed there. The FBI agent on the witness stand admitted that the FBI had videotape of the delivery of at least of the truck on its way to deliver the bomb. So we know that John Doe 2 was real.
Well, now I'm really confused, because why is John Doe 2 not at the top of the FBI most wanted list as a perpetrator of the country's worst domestic terror attack in its history?
Pretty soon, and in puzzling fashion, considering that this was the biggest manhunt in history. It was a global manhunt. There was a $2 million reward offered for the identification and capture of John Doe 2. But pretty soon, within a couple of months, the FBI began to back away from John Doe 2. They produced a new theory that John Doe 2 was a case of mistaken identity, that the staffer that was the basis of the sketch at the body shop was mistaken, that he was really talking about a completely innocent soldier who...
I'm sorry to interrupt, but just to hold this up. So this is the flyer produced by the FBI after the terror attack, right? So I believe that turned out to be Tim McVeigh right there.
Believed to be Timothy McVeigh. Our investigation would raise some questions about that, but yes, a lookalike for Timothy McVeigh or a lookalike for
But
Timothy
at least we
McVeigh.
can kind of account for this guy, whether it's the correct accounting or not.
Absolutely.
This is the sketch of John Doe number 2. This is produced by the feds. This is FBI.
FBI.
Okay. So, and this person has never been identified. No one's looking for him, and the FBI is now saying he never existed.
That's correct.
Okay. Given that you had dozens of people identify this person, as being alive and being with Tim McVeigh, dozens of people, and given that the FBI itself said, yeah, he existed, on what basis are they now saying he never existed?
Well, a couple of months later, they introduced a new story. This was that the man believed to be John Doe 2 was this innocent soldier who had come into the body shop the day before and had somehow been mistakenly time traveled into the memory of the mechanic who gave the info about the sketch, but that it was all just a mistake, that Timothy McVeigh was by himself. It was never a very credible explanation.
Did they identify this?
Yes, they identified him. They talked to him. They found that, he had the baseball cap that some of the witnesses had described John Doe 2 wearing, and he was in with a friend. So the two of them were together, and it was somewhat credible, or credible enough, and they were very certain and confident about it. And the story began to change.
So they said, if I'm following this, that actually some other guy and a buddy walked into the same body shop around the same time, and the guy at the body shop just misremembered and thought that guy was with Tim McVeigh.
That's right.
But he wasn't.
That's right.
And so the FBI is now saying that Tim McVeigh did this alone.
Yes.
Okay. How do they explain away the eyewitness testimony of people who were there at the scene and saw them both in the truck together?
Tucker, that is one of the abiding questions never answered about this case. And as a matter of fact, years later, after some of the controversies that would, develop, one of the top case commanders, Danny Coulson, conceded that this single fact of 24 eyewitnesses who saw John Doe 2 in the bomb truck with Timothy McVeigh is not something that can just be explained away with this new story.
I have an idea. Let's go to the videotape. There was videotape that was admitted, you said, on the stand by a federal officer, that they had the videotape. So that would just show where's the video. Have you seen the videotape?
No one, Tucker, has seen that videotape
in 30 years
outside the FBI.
In 30 years, they've never produced that.
They've never produced it. And imagine this was an incredibly high-profile mass murder trial. Those images were not shown at the trial. The videotape was not shown at the trial.
It was not shown at the trial?
No.
Why?
Well, that's never been credibly answered by the FBI.
Okay. So I just want to start as big picture as we can before we get into the details, but I'm already coming, just as an ignorant person who sort of remembers all of this, we're coming to points that are just don't make any sense at all on the most basic level.
And there are many of these.
I'm aware. I'm now aware. But I want to go into this slowly because I think this is not the Kennedy assassination. This is not something on which there have been 50 books written. I mean, you have written a great book on this, maybe one or two others, but most people, I don't think, as of right now, summer of 2025, have revisited this in their heads and said, actually, the Warren Commission was fake. That hasn't happened.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. So you have now the claim by the FBI that McVeigh did this himself. He had help from this friend of his called Terry Nichols, who is to this day still in prison serving life. But he was not in Oklahoma City that day, is my understanding, correct?
Correct.
Right.
He was in Kansas.
He was in Kansas. So they're saying that Tim McVeigh did the actual bombing totally by himself.
Rented the bomb truck in Junction City by himself, drove to Oklahoma City by himself, delivered and detonated the bomb by himself.
And
that's the
escaped
state's
by
case.
himself.
That's the government's case. And escaped by himself.
What do they say his motive was?
He was enraged at the government for its overreach at Waco, which was the government assault on the Branch Davidian compound in Waco, Texas.
2 years before.
To the day, April 19, 1993 was the FBI, the final assault after an 80-some day standoff 2 years before Oklahoma City bombing.
That was where Janet Reno killed all those kids.
Yes, there were children. There were heavy casualties for children as well as adults.
And they said Tim McVeigh was so mad about that he decided to bomb the federal building in Oklahoma City. Any indication as to why Oklahoma City?
Well, Oklahoma City was central to an anti-government movement in the Midwest. So it was a high-profile target.
So the U.S. dollar is not the bulwark it has been for easier. It can be. This
being stopped in the street, detained, in a few instances arrested. So they were looking hard for a month.
Who was Tim McVeigh exactly? Timothy McVeigh.
Timothy McVeigh was a 26-year-old Bronze Star ex-soldier from the Desert Storm operation in Iraq. And he had come back home in 1992. This was 3 years before the bombing, and kind of kicked around his home, the home where he grew up in upstate New York. Had a couple of jobs, security work, but never really gripped into a future after the Army. There's a story about he was a great soldier, an intense, passionate soldier, and he was offered a tryout for Special Forces at the end of his tour, and he had developed blisters on his feet, so the story went, and couldn't make the physical part of the tryout. So he washed out of Special Forces, and that had been his dream. That's where he always saw himself. So when he came back home, security guard work wasn't satisfying. He was living with his dad, and he was pretty aimless at the time.
So how did he get from being an unemployed security guard, Bronze Star winning veteran, living with his dad in upstate New York, to blowing up a federal building in Oklahoma City?
Yeah, that was a really curious passage. He became very political, and he headed south to Florida and hooked up with one of the kind of mysterious connections that we know about in the next couple of years of his life, a retired gun dealer named Roger Moore. And he basically went on the gun show circuit. He carried with him copies of the Turner Diaries, which is this anti-Semitic, apocalyptic novel that he was very much, and not just anti-Semitic, but anti-government. It's basically the story of an insurrection. And he would take this with him to gun shows and try to, sell it or convince people to read it. He was trying to convince all his friends to read the Turner Diaries, and he just floated around without knowing what really was going on in Timothy McVeigh's life for the 2 years that led up to the bombing. It's really a puzzle. And he lived this road warrior life, staying in motels, unexplained. I've heard somebody account for, like, it would have cost someone in those dollars in those days, like $50,000 to live this way. But we only know of him having earned like $5,000. So where did he get the rest of the money? Unaccounted for. But he drove, thousands of miles, stayed in motels, hit gun show circuits, and eventually 2 years later, plus some months, bombed the federal building.
So we know at the time, so the government had committed a couple at least of high-profile massacres of conservative Christian white people, one at Ruby Ridge and one at Waco. And so they were, as I recall, they were very concerned about backlash from conservative Christian white Americans becoming radicalized white supremacists, Nazis, whatever that means, but like radical anti-government white people.
Yes.
That was the threat.
Yes.
In their view, in the Clinton years, the first Clinton term. And so they were trying to neutralize that threat by infiltrating those groups with federal informants.
Correct.
But at scale, like they were really working on this. Can we say that for certain?
Yes.
Yeah. So Tim McVeigh going to all these different, basically hanging around with all these people, joining the circuit of, this political philosophy based in gun shows, and no visible means of support. We can assume he was a federal informant, it sounds like, or may have been a federal informant.
There's never been any record. I think that would be perhaps a bit of a reach to assume he was a federal informant. It was, at least to my understanding, and there is going to be some evidence about that. But I think making that connection, the gun shows were a hangout.
Right.
If you were lost and male and ex-military, yep, and seeking direction, as McVeigh's attorney would argue in his defense at trial, there were a lot of people who shared his beliefs about it, what had happened at Waco,
yes,
who were seeking a clubhouse, if you will, and the gun show circuit was that place. So I think it could have been just he was searching.
I'm sure. But that world would have been crawling with informants.
Yes, absolutely. Crawling with informants and crawling with law enforcement.
Yeah. I mean, that's what happened to Randy Weaver, of course.
Yes.
His world was crawling with law enforcement because, again, the FBI had identified that world, that brand of politics as the main threat. Randy Weaver sold a shotgun that was like too short or something, and they wanted to.
Well, he was being pressed to be an informant and refused.
Yeah. And so they murdered his wife and son. But back to Tim McVeigh. So we don't really know what he was doing during that time, it sounds like, with any great specificity.
Hope you enjoyed Hope you enjoyed that interview with Tucker. I think it's really important, and I think you should listen to it because it really opened my eyes as to what is going on. Just another chapter in the hurt that has been inflicted on the American people. So I think you would be wise to take a look at that video on Tucker with this lady on the Oklahoma City bombing. We're going to be on War Room tonight at 5 p.m. and not sure the exact time during that 2-hour period, but join us there. We'll be on Emerald Robinson tomorrow. I think her show's tomorrow afternoon. Hope you enjoyed this show. I love Brandon Weichert, and I really wanted to get that interview out with Tucker because I think it's really important you understand how long this has been going on with what we're seeing today. So we'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m., Monday through Friday, 10 to noon Eastern on the SCIF. Thank you for joining us.